For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and you're watching our daily Tuesday to Thursday flagship show, The Gist. Joining us from Colombo is Jamila Husain. She's the deputy editor of the Daily Mirror in Sri Lanka. Jamila, thanks for giving us time again on StratNews Global, especially on this special day. Let me, and through all our viewers as well, wish you a happy birthday.
Thank you, Amitabh. Thank you so much.
Jamila, just looking at the latest developments now, about a week back, 6 days back, when Basil Rajapaksa was sworn in as the finance minister, there have been developments today with the Indian High Commissioner also visiting him, handing over a letter from his counterpart. But just wanted to get your view on what a lot of analysts across South Asia have written about post what happened last week, in terms of whether you think Sri Lanka is moving towards dynastic politics with the Rajapaksas controlling so much power.
Well, Basil Rajapaksa's entry into parliament did not come as a surprise to anybody, because when the 20th Amendment was passed by the ruling government, there was a specific clause within that amendment which said that dual citizen holders could hold parliamentary seats and could then thereafter enter cabinet and probably contest future elections as well. So everybody sees as a custom-made amendment which was targeting Basil Rajapaksa, because, as you all know, he is a dual citizenship holder where he's holding on to an American passport. So when the 20th Amendment was passed, after that, it was just a matter of time. It was actually a game of time as to when Basil would enter. There was a lot of speculation back in 2020, as soon as the 20th Amendment was passed, as to whether he would enter Parliament immediately or he would, mark his time and then enter with a portfolio which nobody expected. So back then, Daily Mirror had reported it in September 2020 that Basil was not willing and was not ready to enter Parliament back then when the amendment was passed. But he did so last week, and it was done after much intense discussions between President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, who are his elder brothers. So it was more like a family discussion which took place. And then finally, the portfolio which was held by the Prime Minister himself, that is the Finance Ministry, was handed over to Basil Rajapaksa. And then there was a new ministry which was created, Ministry of Economic Planning, something to do with economic development, which was then handed over to the Prime Minister. So where family dynasty, family politics is concerned, when the Rajapaksas were sworn into power back in 2019, when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa won the presidency and then thereafter Prime Minister won it with his government, this was expected, where the brothers would come in, where the sons would come in. So this does not come as a surprise to the Sri Lankan public, because when the Rajapaksas enter any field, we know that the family will soon follow.
As you're pointing out, some analysts have said the public, in fact, voted for them, so they knew what they were getting into. You mentioned the portfolios that were allotted. There was some controversy, if I can call it that, about what would be under Basil and what would be under Mahinda. A new notification was issued as well. But in terms of power, because it's not just the brothers, the sons, Namal is also there, Chamal's son, I think, is also a part of the government structure, and nephews, nieces, other family members are there in different government jobs, right?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
So we have... Yeah, go ahead.
Like you very correctly said, we have Namal Rajapaksa, who's holding the cabinet portfolio for sports and youth affairs. And then just probably 2 weeks or a little over a month before Basil was sworn in, Namal was also given a state ministership of digital infrastructure, which is also seen as a very powerful portfolio, despite it being a state ministership. And then we have Chamal's son, who was also sworn in as a state minister the day Basil was sworn in, with an additional portfolio. I'm sorry, I cannot even tell you the name of that state ministership, because right now it's going as the longest minister of organic fertilizer, minister of potatoes, minister of onions, everything comes under that one portfolio. But that's a state ministership. So we have Chamal's son who's set there, we have Nirmala Rajapaksa who's set in the cabinet. Then we have, like you very correctly mentioned, we have the other Rajapaksa nephews, nieces who are put into strategic institutions which they are leading. So it's like everyone seems to have taken their place. But mind you, here, Amitabh, I will remind you something. Rajapaksas were sworn in because they had the public backing them. They had the people's power. So like you correctly said just a little while ago, I mean, the public knew what they are going to be voting in for. Gotabaya Rajapaksa won on 6.9 million votes, and Mahinda Rajapaksa, when he won the general election, he smashed all the records as well, and so did Nirmala Rajapaksa. So back then, I mean, the public were clearly supporting this family to come in, and like I said, it's no surprise that the entire Rajapaksa family has followed.
Right. One of our viewers says, with the Rajapaksa brothers consolidating power in Sri Lanka, what are the options for the opposition? But as you're pointing out, both in terms of president and then in parliament, they've got a huge majority.
They got a huge records back then. I mean, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa was not a name which was not known. And in fact, I can tell you that this Rajapaksa victory came because of the Prime Minister, the name he held, the fact that he ended the war against the LTT back in 2009, the fact that he was going on stage and promoting his brother, Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So, you know, everything stemmed up from Mahinda Rajapaksa himself. So it's because we saw a very powerful figure like Mahinda Rajapaksa, who's going into the constituencies, who's going and urging the public, saying, you know, I'm putting my brother forward to you. I'm putting my brother to y'all. Now y'all go vote for him. So that's what's got them the votes, what they got back then. And as far as the opposition is concerned, I mean, we do have an opposition, but then there is a lot of instability within this opposition. So we can only hope and pray that the opposition gets their gears sorted out and, you know, behaves like an opposition.
I'm just going to request you to, if you could lower the volume on your desktop because it's reverberating. Meanwhile, I'll just go on to, when you're talking about the Rajapaksas, now even the portfolio that was given to Basil, finance, and like you pointed out, your publication had months back reported on that, and there was a lot of brickbats that you got, and you turned out to be right anyway. But how do the brothers handle any internal dissent on, or how do they carve up the pie, so as to speak? Apparently they do that at family gatherings, family lunches and dinners, maybe on a weekend.
Amitabh, frankly, I don't know when they carve it up. But I do know that there's a lot of infighting going on within the Rajapaksa brothers. Everything is not as rosy as what it looks, especially when it came even to the finance ministry portfolio. When I reported it back in September 2020, saying that, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa would not complete his term and another sibling would take over his powers. I mean, we knew back then that Basil was getting ready to enter, and Basil would take over some powers of Mahinda Rajapaksa, his brother. So since then, I mean, things have not been very rosy amongst the brothers. There have been ups and downs. But one thing you got to admire about these brothers is that they carve it up behind closed doors. So nothing comes out. Nothing comes out within the public, or nothing comes out where the opposition can come and sort of claim or allege that, this brother fought with this brother, or this nephew fought with this uncle, because it's all done behind closed doors, because they're all brothers. And end of the day, I always maintain blood is much thicker than water.
This blood being much thicker than water, what effect does it have on foreign policy? I mean, Mahinda Rajapaksa was seen when he was president. A big one is tilting towards China. He's prime minister now. He has different portfolios. Defense is with the president. You have the economic finance ministry now with Basil. How does this affect foreign policy in terms of Sri Lanka?
With this entire explanation, what you just gave, the equation, our foreign policy is going to be headed for a complete jumble. Because like you said, we have Mahinda Rajapaksa, who's seen as a very, I wouldn't say pro-China, but I would say he has a very soft stance towards China. Then we have Basil Rajapaksa, who's, like I said, he's an American citizen, but at the same time he holds very close connections with the Chinese and with the Indians. And then we have President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who has up to now, maintained quite balanced foreign relations with China, with India, with the United States. Their foreign policy, how each brother now moves, is yet to be seen, actually, because it's now that Basil has entered the entire political scenario. Going by past experience, Mahinda Rajapaksa would still be a little bit more soft towards the Chinese, and that might continue. But at the same time, he's open to meeting people even from the Indian delegations. So that might continue. But now what's the focus here is to be seen as to how Basil performs, because Basil seems to be having now the power in his hand and not the PM or not the president. All eyes are on Basil Rajapaksa. So how his foreign policy is going to proceed is yet to be seen, because like I said, he is very close to China. He is very close to the United States because he's holding an American passport. And then today we had him meeting the Indian ambassador who handed him a letter from his Indian counterpart. All eyes are now going to be on how Basil proceeds with his foreign policy. And that's a little bit of a question mark still, Amitabh. It's too early to say.
Too early to say, but like you're saying, it's crucial. You mentioned that Gopal Baglay, India's High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, had also met Basil today. The finance minister handed over a letter from his Indian counterpart, Nirmala Sitharaman, talking. The only official communique we got was that the economic development during the pandemic was discussed. But how do you see the recent controversies, whether it's the East Container and West Container Terminal, Colombo Port, or Hambantota before that? How do you see that playing out in terms of the brothers and policy?
To the Chinese, I don't think there's going to be much of an argument there where the Rajapaksa brothers are concerned, because from the way things are now proceeding in Colombo, the main strategic points of the country have already been handed over to the Chinese to conduct development projects. We have the Colombo port, where they have the CICT, which is operated by China. Then we have Hambantota port, which is handed over to China for their operations. Then we have China, which is making all these expressways. They have already finished making quite a few crucial expressways. So then we had the Matale airport, which at one point it was rumored to be given to China, and then it was rumored to be given to India. But then that's at a deadlock, because we don't know which country is proceeding with that discussion. Then when we had the ECT, after several discussions with the Indian delegation, it was not given to them, but instead the Western terminal was offered to them. But I don't think now Basil is going to come back and change much of that, because those are already decisions which were made by his two older brothers. So I don't see a reversal in that. But if at all, Basil might now continue discussions where new projects are concerned with India. I don't think ECT might be part of that discussion, because from what I'm hearing is that that's something which Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa will want to continue discussing. So I don't think Basil is going to be having any discussions there, but Basil will definitely start new discussions and new projects where India is concerned, where America is concerned, where China is concerned, where the Western and the European countries are concerned. So that's what he's going to do. He's not going to touch on what's already been built and what's already ongoing.
So what are these projects that Basil could probably influence going forward?
There's a lot because like the Rajapaksa brothers maintain, Colombo, especially post COVID-19, is open for investments. Like any other country in the world, Colombo was also severely hampered by the pandemic. So it's now basically the Rajapaksa brothers who are inviting foreign investors to come in here. Colombo Port City is something which I'm seeing where Basil might want to strike up discussions as the finance minister, where he might want to, invite American investors, Indian investors to come and invest in the port city, Colombo Port City, because now that it's almost ready and they're open for investments. So Colombo Port City is one thing where I'm seeing immediately Basil coming into the fray and then getting investors, or at least encouraging investors to come there. That's what I'm seeing immediately. But then I'm also seeing projects where which might come under his finance ministry portfolio, where more roads are concerned or more infrastructural development is concerned. I'm also looking at something happening in the north. I'm also looking at something happening in the east. These are areas which are not much touched up to now, not the way the Colombo is touched. Then I'm also looking at central province. So there are a lot of areas where Basil can now come and strike up development projects with his foreign partners.
Basil himself and the Rajapaksas or the government, how do they view India's foreign policy in terms of, us, New Delhi continuously pushing devolution or constitutional amendments, things up in the north? Is that seen as an imposition?
India is concerned, the Rajapaksa brothers have been very clear that India is our big brother, they have to be respected. What they say is definitely taken into consideration, but no country, absolutely no country, has a right to interfere in Sri Lanka's sovereignty. Because the moment we take the name India here, frankly speaking, Amitabh, we have certain sections of the public who say that India is trying to control us because they are our immediate neighbor. So it's a very sensitive topic for the Rajapaksas where India is concerned, because they have to soft pedal in a way that they don't upset China and they don't even upset any other country where India is concerned. Where North is concerned, they know that India has a bigger role or a bigger influence in the North. They do know that. But at the same time, they do know that they cannot survive on Indian investments alone where the North is concerned. So they have opened up the North as well to other countries for investments. Now I do know that they have opened it up to China. They may even open it out to the Europe. They may even open it out to the West, including the United States. So India is something which they will soft pedal on, but at the same time they will send a stern message out saying that do not interfere in the sovereignty of our land and let us proceed with the way we want to proceed, because we are the sitting government.
So the foreign minister was pretty happy when India abstained at the UNHRC, and we had that discussion. We just put out those pictures. But just a question that Varun Pratap asked related to the points you're making, Jamila. Will the Chinese be able to influence Sri Lanka's policies, given a Beijing-friendly government, which he feels calling the shots, especially with respect to the BRI?
No, I don't think the Chinese can very easily call their shots where the Rajapaksas are concerned. Like I told you, this is a family government. They are very powerful in their own way because they have the backing of the masses here. They came in with huge majorities. So it's not like any country, let alone China or any other country. They cannot have their way very easily where the Rajapaksa brothers are concerned. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, Basil Rajapaksa, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Chama Rajapaksa, they may each have soft corners for any country. But when it comes to policy making, especially the foreign policies, or when it comes to inviting a certain country to come and invest in a certain project, it's not going to be easy for any country because these guys are tough. Frankly speaking, these guys are tough. But at the same time, Sri Lanka is a country which supports the Belt and Road Initiative. So if the Chinese government does approach us and say that this is the new project which we are putting forward under the BRI, it's definitely going to be considered. And if there is a win-win situation for both, let's say a little bit of a bigger win situation for China, still, the Rajapaksa government may continue if it is creating local employment here, if it is going to strengthen our economy here, where the country will benefit in some form. So if they see that this project is going to benefit us in some way, then they're definitely going to go ahead, because BRI is something they're really, really fond of.
Another question which asks, if I put it on the screen there, how minorities are viewing this new scenario, as they were, are they as concerned as they were when Mahinda Rajapaksa was president?
Minorities are concerned, Amitabh. I think that the last conversation I had with you was amidst when Muslim COVID-19 patients were being forcefully cremated. So when the Rajapaksas came into power was when we had the COVID, which broke out, I think 2 months later, as soon as Gotabaya Rajapaksa was sworn into presidency. And then we saw immediately them cremating Muslim COVID-19 patients, which didn't go well at all, because we were the only country in the world who were forcefully cremating the Muslim bodies. So ever since then, there has been like a fear, I wouldn't say a fear psychosis, but a little bit of a hatred which has been created against the Rajapaksa brothers. And they are anyway not seen as a government which is pro-minority. Because when we go back to 2019, when President Rajapaksa was sworn in his inauguration speech, he very clearly mentioned that he had won on 6.9 million votes, and those were Buddhist votes. Those were the majority singular votes. So there itself, he gave out a signal that, I've come here through my people, through my majority people. And, so from those days, the signs what were given were not very pro-minority. And anyway, the Tamil community, a majority of the Tamil community, especially those in the north, still seek answers for their family members who are still missing following the final stages of the war. So they are not favored in the north as well. They are not favored amongst the Muslims because of the COVID-19 issue which took place. So they are not seen as a very friendly minority government, and they never will be. It will be very difficult for the Rajapaksas to break in with the minorities, whether it's Gotabaya, whether it's Mahinda, whether it's Basil, whether it's Jamila, even whether it's Namal in the future.
As you mentioned earlier, even President Gotabaya, as soon as he was elected president, I think the first interview he ever gave to media was to our founder and editor-chief Nitin Gokhale, and repeatedly it's about that there shouldn't be so much borrowing or lending. There should be more investment, and investment should be open to as many countries as want to invest in Sri Lanka. Related to that, Rishikesh, I beg your pardon, Muruk asked, are people in Sri Lanka concerned about the Chinese debt trap? Because there's been a lot of talk about currency swap with India. There was a line of credit that was also given, so as with the Chinese.
Which has been forgotten. In fact, now, see, Chinese, this entire scenario about Chinese debt was there even during the former government led by President Maitripala and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. But now that the Rajapaksas are back in power, and since they are known as a little bit more friendlier towards China, this is definitely something which is on the public's mind. But this is something which is on the Colombo public's mind. But when you go into the masses, when you go into the rural villages, people there, they do not bother much about the debt, what they own China for the projects what they bought in, or for the loans what they have given. So it's only amongst one group of public which is in capital Colombo. But Amitabh, when you come here and when you go into the provinces, when you go into the electorates, when you go into the masses, they would still see the fact that Rajapaksas are seen as saviors who would come and take us out of this debt. and who would bring in employment and who would bring in more development projects where their children would be secured, where their children would receive an education, and where their children, when they grow up, they would get employment in these foreign companies or in these foreign projects. Now, I'll tell you one example. Colombo Port City, it's being portrayed or it's being advertised amongst the masses that they're going to be creating 80,000 job opportunities for the locals, that they're going to attract $15 billion worth of investments in the coming few years, which would secure your children's lives, which would secure their future. So when they're going on that on that scenario, when they're taking that brand and going into the masses are not much worried about the debt which we have to repay. It's like I told you, it's only amongst the centric Colombo crowd.
Right. I'm just going to put out a compliment to you from one of our viewers, Sai Prasad Vishwanath, who says, great to hear from Jamila. She understands the situation in Sri Lanka in and out. Jamila Husain, again, thank you for giving us your perspective from Colombo and helping us understand the situation a little bit more. And again, very happy birthday to you, and sorry that we took some time out of you celebrating.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And please, you guys have a great day.
The pleasure was all ours. Jamila Husain, the Deputy Editor of Daily Mirror from Colombo. Thank you so much for coming on StratNews Global. And just a reminder to our viewers, do click on that bell icon on YouTube. You'll get notified when we put up videos like this one. To subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, because those numbers do affect our performance in terms of financially. You can also help support us. There is a descriptor in the YouTube. There is a link in the YouTube descriptor that you can go to if you want to support us financially to continue doing our work. To also follow our social media handles on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. This is The Gist on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh.